there. And I assume your colleagues, other cryptographic researchers, anyone who knows or thinks about these problems actually would agree. Is there an industry sentiment around privacy in your research field?
People think a lot about privacy in my research field. However, very, very many things stop at, say, the legal level, meaning we have very, very, very advanced privacy definitions. For example, differential privacy. Differential privacy is a very mathematical and cryptography inspired definition of privacy, and it goes like follows. Imagine you have a question you would like to ask to a database. And now, say the question is, what is the average income of people listed in the database? Okay. And now we look how the answer varies if we take people out of the database. Okay. And if the answer varies a lot, then there's not much privacy. And if the answer does not vary a lot, then there's pretty good privacy. I will give you an example. If you look at what you are voting for in an election, then these small samples can already be very, very close to the general result. This means that kicking out few people from the database of, say, an election would not change the result much. So releasing the result of an election has a very high level of privacy, because even if I personally would not have voted at all, the result would probably not change. And so there's a very high level of privacy. Whereas if you release the average income for, say, a small village where some billionaires living, then if you take this person out of the data set, it will vary a lot. And so there's a big privacy leak. And now differential privacy says that the variation by taking out people from the list should not be too much, no matter whom you take out of the list. Okay? And usually you decide this for every question you ask. So like average income or voting results.
Reference. Yeah.
Or that. And now, would a mechanism which is differentially private, would it comply to the GDPR? I don't know. Because we have all these nice technical terms and methods, but the legal people are not yet in the boat, and they're not yet considering this as a valid form of anonymization. And one of the reasons being that, see, differential privacy is about how much the result varies depending on whom you take out of the list. But this is not black and white. It can vary a little, it can vary a lot. Yeah. Whereas from the legal perspective, data is either anonymous or it's not anonymous. So it's a black-white definition. Actually, there's a big problem here because it's very, very difficult to convince the law people that mechanisms really preserve privacy, because the only way to really preserve privacy is either by making the data anonymous, which is a black-white definition and very, very hard to achieve, because there might be something not anonymous left over. Or the other way is to have contracts that I allow you to process this data, and we have a contract about it, and this contract keeps you from misusing it.
Yeah.
Of course, a contract does not keep you from misusing it, but we do have the technological means to keep you from misusing it. But those are not yet accepted by the legal people. And so I think one big hindrance of privacy technologies is that you cannot use them and be compliant to the law because they are not accepted yet. And I think one big change I would wish for the future is that certain privacy enhancing technologies will be immediately complying with the GDPR. And then I think lots of these technologies will be used.
Yeah, so it's basically a friction of lawyers that don't understand the technology really, because you said, like you said earlier, we have the technology, but it has to be they have to be implemented into the law, and
Yeah.
it seems to me that policymakers don't really have the knowledge what is possible with cryptography. If I remember correctly, you also worked for the German government a little bit, and were trying to educate in the realms of a certain project about cryptography. Is that correct?
I'm doing counseling for policymakers. That's true, and I'm advocating cryptography as one means to be compliant to GDPR. But it's not only that the legal people don't understand cryptography. It's also a little bit the other way around, because a lot of cryptographers think it's encrypted, nothing can happen. But that's not true. There's the risk that maybe some hacker could steal your secret key, and then all the encryption would be gone. And now, to be really able to judge if a certain privacy mechanism is suitable to comply to the GDPR, you have to make a holistic analysis. It's not just the cryptography. So you have to be also, say, hacker proof. You have to have a certain level of IT security. And this is more difficult to judge because in cryptography, everything is a little bit idealized. So there are no hackers. And in the real world, data leaks happen, hacks happen, and you have to take all this into account as well. So if I would be selling cryptography as the solution to compliant GDPR respecting data processing, this would only be half true, because it might be that the cryptography is very well done, and still it might be that you cannot trust your computer, your own computer, because I don't know,
It is
you
compromised,
use
for
it as a
example.
private
Yeah.
computer as well, and you go through the internet to all kinds of shady places, and maybe you have ransomware or I don't know what on your computer. They might pressure you that they will release your data, and you have now sensitive data there as well, and you have the sensitive data before it's encrypted. So saying storing encrypted data in the cloud should be compliant to the GDPR is something I would claim is true. But in detail, it's only half true, because you have to tell me how your complete system works. It might be that the way you encrypt the data is not secure enough, and there might be a leak of sensitive data, not due to the cryptography, the encryption you're using, but due to the overall setup of your system. And so the law people are right, the policymakers are right. They don't trust a single technology. If I would say this differentially private mechanism is very nice, why isn't it immediately compliant to the GDPR, then they say because it depends on much more things. Where do you process the data to get it differentially private? How do you store the data? How do you store secret keys if there are secret keys? And so on. And so we have quite a long way to go because usually technical people are a little bit over optimistic regarding methods and technology, and the legal people are maybe a little bit too mistrusting and saying, "Oh, this could go wrong and that could go wrong." And I think we have to be pragmatic. We have to kind of meet in the middle, and that this is possible. You see every day in the internet, if you use encrypted email, you may even send personal data without violating GDPR. We can be pragmatic. For email, we kind of solve the problem, and we will have lots of things to discuss. For example, I have a pretty clear opinion on what cryptography can do, what differential privacy can do, but I don't know yet what my opinion would be if training large language models like ChatGPT, if this is violating our privacy or not. I think we don't know yet enough about how you could get out private information from there with tricks. And so I think privacy will be a big issue, and large language models, which are now a hype, make this even more clear.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, sounds like there has to be a very holistic approach where technicians and lawyers have to come together to form policies in order to solve this problem. I don't want to get into how realistic that is in your opinion, but more
I
or
will
less.
not tell you.
I want to touch on two other topics. The first one is actually very related to privacy, and you touched upon it a little bit earlier, are elections.
Yeah.
Voting mechanisms through cryptography, because you were involved in a project that was basically solving trustless voting, if I could say so, or a mechanism to prove that you cannot cheat during elections. So I definitely want to hear about that, and after that we will dive into the large language models a little bit more.
Okay. Electronic voting is a very, very, very fascinating topic. However, again, you have to look at a holistic approach, and due to many people not really understanding complex mechanisms or cryptography, you have to look if electronic voting maybe has a bad influence on the security of voting. I will give you an example. Imagine you have a ballot and paper vote, as we do right now. You put your choice on the ballot, and you put it into this urn, and it will be collected and counted later on. This is something everybody understands. Everybody understands it to the extent that they can even judge if something goes wrong. Imagine someone comes into the voting office and says, "Oh, I'm a technician. I have to carry away all the votes cast so far to repair them." Then people would say, "Oh, no, there's nothing to repair. Those are paper votes. So there's nothing to be repaired." But if you have a voting machine, a complicated computer voting machine, and someone comes in and says, "Oh, I'm a technician. I have to repair this computer right now," people would believe it. So we don't have the right instinct to know if someone is cheating or not. So we have to be very careful when using electronic voting. And I will tell you it's a very fascinating topic from a cryptographic point of view to show what's possible and what's impossible. But regarding actual voting for political votes, political elections, I would prefer them to be paper-based, to remain paper-based for a long time, because we don't really know the consequences. We can start with other types of elections at other places, like in certain clubs or at my employer, or there are lots of places where you have kind of small elections where you can kind of practice how we get along with electronic voting. And actually, we do a lot of things online right now, like right now. And this actually changes how we do things. And some groups meet only online. And then there's no alternative to electronic voting. They cannot have paper voting everybody in the home office. Yeah, that's not possible. So we will have political elections in the future, and I hope those will remain paper-based. But we have, due to the corona, lots of things happening online, and there's no alternative to online voting. And so I think online voting is something we need to do as good as possible. And I will give you an example. The problem with online voting is you cannot trust your own computer. Meaning, a hacker could, for example, have, I don't know, infected 100,000 PCs, and then this hacker would be able to change the vote of 100,000 voters. This is a very, very big threat. And what can you do about this? Can you improve the cybersecurity of all PCs around? No, you cannot. But there is a nice and clever, different way to vote, which is called code voting. There, you obtain a sheet of paper via snail mail, not electronic at all. And there, every party has, say, a 3-letter code and a 3-letter acknowledgement. So what you do now is you sit down at your PC and you want to vote, say, the X party. And then you look in the list, and the X party has a WTU as the code. Then you enter WTU and wait for the acknowledgement, which should be the other code listed at your X party. And then you can be sure that your computer did not change the vote. And also, if these sheets of paper are kind of different for all kinds of people, then even your computer might not know what you voted for. That's not how the complete system works. You have to also think about, how do I print those sheets of paper and blah, blah, blah. But it tells you that there are ideas how to make online voting in a way that even if your computer is corrupted, you can still verify that your vote has reached the authority. And so I think online voting is a very, very, very interesting area. And I think we have to provide very good solutions, maybe based on code voting, because we are doing more and more online. And I think that voting there should be secure as well.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting. I actually never thought about the problem that your own computer might be compromised, and therefore the online vote could be manipulated that way. And I imagine many computers are actually compromised. So, yeah. So my initial question was, and you kind of answered it already, when will online voting for elections will be happening in Germany? So your answer would be hopefully not in the near future, right?
Yep.
And how practical would that snail mail solution be? Is that like a practical solution that we could implement, or not really?
I
In your
think so.
opinion?
I think it's even more practical than voting via letter. I think if you are in a political election, either you have to be present and go to the voting office and to the voting booth, or you have to vote via letter, which is not very secure, I would say, because I send away the letter and I don't really know what happens. Of course, there are multiple people involved when counting, and it's difficult to cheat because there are many witnesses seeing you cheat or something. But still, it's a little bit opaque. And also, the problem is that I could be forced to vote for a certain party, put it to the end into the envelope, and send it away. So someone can force me to do a certain decision, which is impossible if I go to the voting booth. It's not impossible, but it's a little bit more tricky to force someone who's inside the voting booth to do a specific choice. But voting via letter is not very secure. And if the number of votes coming in by letter increases more and more because people are too lazy to go to the voting office, then I think we have to really think about whether this is how we would like to have it, or if we would, like Estonia, maybe change to digital voting.
Yeah, and one argument for that is actually you mentioned you could be forced, but you could also, and there comes privacy back into the equation, you could also be bribed to vote for a certain party,
Yep.
right? So if you're voting via letter mail, you could send a picture, a proof of your vote, actually
Yep.
to the briber, and then send it into the ballot. And so it's really important to have privacy for voting mechanisms, because then you would eliminate the bribing as well, right?
Yep.
So
But privacy
yeah.
is not enough. Actually, we have security definitions in cryptography. And what we would like to achieve for voting is called incoercibility, meaning there's nothing left with which you can prove to a third party how you voted. And privacy is not enough because, as you said, if I am selling my vote, then I cooperate with the other person to really convince the other person. This is a threat which has its own name in cryptography. It's called coercion, meaning actually in cryptography, we don't really distinguish between vote buying and coercion because the effect is the same. If someone pressures you or if someone I don't know, gives you money, you will cooperate with that guy, and you need very, very good techniques uh, to be able to avoid this kind of vote buying or coercion. And one technique which might be the easiest way out is revoting, meaning we have two kinds of voting. The one is online, and if everything went well and you were not coerced, you just leave it like this. You do your online voting, everything's fine. But if something did not went well, you can still go to the voting office and you can there place a paper vote. And this will kind of, in a very clever way, override your online vote. And then you can be coerced, but you can undo this by later going to the voting office. And nobody will give you money for your vote because they know you can undo it anyway. So vote buying will not be a good market.
Yeah, that's interesting. Why haven't we implemented this already?
I think that paper and ballot voting works well, and things seems to be fine, and we did not see any need to implement this. But as soon as we switch to online voting or electronic voting, we have to think about how to implement something like revoting.
Okay, yeah, understood. So it's more important for online voting than for the paper ballot system. All right. One maybe quick last question regarding elections, a bit more philosophical, not really technical. I mean, if we could make voting more convenient through online voting, for example, would it make sense in a democracy to make the decision making a little bit more granular for the general population? Meaning, I'll give you an example. For example, our legislators want to implement a certain law, and there is like a mechanism where you could veto that law before it gets implemented. And if, for example, 66.6% of the population are voting for this veto mechanism, then the law won't get implemented. Does something like that make sense to you, or not really?
Yeah, it does make sense. But the question is, and that's the philosophical part of the question, if you want this. Actually, we in Germany have a representative democracy, meaning you vote for someone, and then this person, if it gets elected, represents you, but makes her or his own decisions. Meaning, even if you would like to do it differently, no, you voted your representative, and they choose according to their consciousness what to do. Okay. And on the other end is what's called basis democracy, at least in German, that for every decision you kind of vote. Like every decision, instead of going to the parliament, you will have an election to decide this. And now what's interesting is basis democracy has a big problem, because you have to know a lot to really make these decisions. And there is a very, very interesting compromise. I'm not saying that I want this to be implemented, but it's interesting, which is called liquid democracy. Liquid democracy means you have something like a basis democracy where every decision is decided via an election, but you can have your own representatives. It's like vote delegation. You say, oh, if it's about, say, environment issues, then I delegate my vote to my neighbor who is an expert. Okay? And then I don't have to be top informed. It's enough that he is top informed. And now, if you want to implement liquid democracy, it's only possible with online voting. It's really a very complicated mechanism, and doing everything with paper, meaning I get mailed this paper, I have to bring it to my neighbor, he votes for me. That's not possible. So actually, if you want to have other democratic structures than representative democracy, like basis democracy, or maybe something in between using liquid democracy, you will have to implement electronic voting, because otherwise it will just not scale. It will not be doable.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm talking for me, my personal opinion right now. I think we should at least experiment with this. You know, liquid democracy is something that exists in cryptocurrency governance actually quite a bit. Cryptocurrency governance works a little bit different in general because there are different rules there, but I think we could at least try some mechanisms that exist there and maybe implement it, like you said, in a small way. You know, your local club that you're attending, having like this mini experiments, because I think why shouldn't we improve democracy? You know, I think that it's at least worth the idea. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
that's
you're
just my
completely
personal
right.
opinion.
There are reasons not wanting to do liquid democracy, but we're not able to, should not be the reason. The reason should be that we decide not to do it, and not that we are forced by technical possibilities or impossibilities. So I think experimenting with democracy is very interesting, and there are a lot of things you could do, and I think democracy is something very, very important, and we have to think a lot about it.
Yeah, 100%. Or dismiss it in the first place because saying, "Oh, it won't work because of this and this reason," without never have tried it. You know. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, last topic: the LLMs, so large language models. Coming back to ChatGPT, like you said earlier, they're really hyped right now. I want to take out the hype immediately because I see the value in these large language models, but also they have some critical flaws in my opinion still, and maybe we can talk about like if they're solvable or not. For example, first flaw: ChatGPT cannot do basic arithmetic. In my brain, I don't have a technological background. Calculating stuff should be the use case of a large language model. I don't know. It just makes intuitively sense to me that these models would solve these problems really good. But for some reason, if I do a basic correlation, for example, it will give me a different result even if I input the same data 5 times.
I think that why should large language models do arithmetic? If you have a pocket calculator, it's better at arithmetic than I am. But you're doing your podcast with me and not with my pocket calculator, because you think that I might tell you interesting things and that my pocket calculator is kind of boring. And maybe if you want to have a hybrid system, which is kind of able to calculate and able to tell you interesting things, then maybe you should use kind of a split brain, that you have an interpreter reading the question and then either feeding it to the pocket calculator or feeding it to the large language model. And I think this will be done in future. So I think that the biggest flaw of large language models right now is that they are just large language models. They are not able to do logic. They are not able to do arithmetic. But I think this is something where I'm very optimistic that this can be solved in a different way. For example, if you look at math, in math, we have proofs. And if you prove something, then you are really convinced. And checking a proof is very, 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 very easy, because you just have to check step by step if the steps are elementary and allowed. And now I could convince you that there are, I don't know, infinitely many prime numbers, and you would be really convinced because there's a proof for that. And now you could, for example, imagine that such a symbolic mathematical proof technique could work in the background, that the output of the large language model might be proof checked, at least if it is something that's proof checkable. And so one problem a lot of people claim is a problem is that if you ask ChatGPT to write a scientific paper, it will invent the literature, like, oh, these authors proved I don't know what, and this paper just doesn't exist. But it would be very, very, very easy to just check if the paper exists or not. And also maybe we expect too much. If you don't combine large language models with symbolic logic or with a pocket calculator, you cannot expect it to do all these things, due to large language models being large language models, having a certain statistic of words, and a lot of well-written sentences follow this statistic. So ChatGPT is able to output well-written sentences, but logical proofs, scientific papers, and arithmetic does not follow this kind of statistics. And so we cannot expect this. But I think large language models have really surprised us, because we thought that we would be very far away from computers being indistinguishable from humans in conversation. Indistinguishability game invented by Turing.
Turing
And
test, yeah.
now we have machines which are close to winning or winning the Turing test. And so that's very astonishing. But they are large language models. So like our brain has different regions responsible for different skills, we might have to build systems where the large language model is just one part of the system, and you need pocket calculators and logic as well.
There will be eventually an intelligence that is superior to ours. Is that something possible in your opinion, or not really? Because I'm not too
I think,
convinced about it, to be honest. Doesn't really make sense to me, but
okay, I think an intelligence superior to our intelligence is possible, but I don't see it in the near or medium future, because actually we don't really know how to combine these things to get really, really clever machines. And also, if you look at robotics, those robots are not very helpful at doing housework. Or do you know any robot able to clean the kitchen? So it
just the
seems
floor.
that certain tasks are very, very difficult. And I think we kind of had the wrong intuition before, because we thought that the first thing robots will do is primitive work like cleaning the kitchen. And the last thing robots will do is replace our creativity and write poems. But now it came the other way around. Writing poems, if you follow the right statistic of words, seems to be easy for computers. Whereas the different decisions you have to make and the interpretation of the environment you have to do when cleaning the kitchen seems to be very, very, very difficult. And also there's not much data. So you can have a few robots trying to clean the kitchen and you get some data. But for the large language model, you could harvest the internet, the publicly available information in the internet. Those are huge amounts of data, whereas you don't have a lot of data how to clean the kitchen. And so I think there are tasks where large language models are good, but this super intelligence which will raise to power and enslave the humans, I think this will be very far away.
All right. But theoretically possible, yes or no?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Actually, I
Okay.
see no reason in principle why. I mean, human level intelligence is possible. Humans prove it. And so why shouldn't there be a level above that?
Yeah, it makes intuitively sense. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so let's talk about the areas where large language models are very useful. And I'll mention one of them
Yep.
because I've been learning a little bit, or I've dove into the program R, which is for statistical analysis. And you have to have like a little bit of, I wouldn't say coding knowledge, but basic, I don't know, giving basic instructions, because there are no buttons to, like in a statistical program like SPSS, to run some statistical analysis. And I was very unfamiliar before, but then I used ChatGPT to teach me about like how to give basic instructions to R. And
Mhm.
there it's really, really useful because I can describe exactly my scenario and even give it my instructions, and it will correct my instructions, and I'm always getting to the right conclusion. So in certain areas where you don't have much subjectivity, I would say, there is AI can teach, can be a really good teacher, or these large
Yeah,
language models in particular.
I
Any
completely
area? Yeah.
yeah, I completely agree with you. If you are not an expert, then ChatGPT is probably better than you are, because ChatGPT is, say, very good on average. And if you are, with your skills in programming R, if you are below average, ChatGPT might be better. But if you are an expert, then you might notice that ChatGPT is not perfect. And so when it comes to programming something regarding cybersecurity, say a cybersecurity mechanism protecting a bank, then I would not trust ChatGPT to do it right, because just following the statistics might not give you a program that's secure. So it might not even be correct in every aspect. It might be pretty good, but pretty good might not be enough if it's about protecting a bank. And so I completely agree. If you want to do something, programming something, and you are not an expert, ChatGPT can be a great help. You just have to kind of explain it in normal words what you would like to have, and ChatGPT can kind of match this to computer code. But if this would be used to control a rocket, I would not use ChatGPT. I would trust experts. But again, it might be that in future you can verify programs, you can check programs, you can test programs. So it might be that in the background, in future, maybe there will be some kind of software testing as well, and maybe the quality of code from ChatGPT will be awesome.
Yes. Any other areas where you see a good use case for large language models other than teaching?
A lot of help could be when formulating things that sound good, eloquently formulating sentences. Also for research on the internet. I think this interaction will really change things a lot. Look at Google. There you put in the words, and then you get the search results, and maybe you're not satisfied. Then you will put in different words, but it's a little bit like guesswork. Google is not really helping you other than displaying what the result of your last question was. Whereas large language models could be a way to really, like a dialogue, find out things, and maybe find even things you would not find using a search engine because you didn't even know they exist. So I think search engines will have a hard time computing with good large language models. Uh, Large language models will help you wherever you are not a top expert, and it might be cooking, it might be programming. They will help you maybe finding out about books that you maybe read some book and you thought, oh, I liked or did not like this and that, and you can discuss this with ChatGPT. It would be a lot more difficult to discuss this with, say, a search engine, because there you would maybe search for the title of the book, then you would find maybe some reviews of the book, but they would then maybe not look at the detail you are interested in. But if there is a review somewhere looking at that detail, is something you will find out with a large language model. You will just discuss, and then the statistics found out in the complete internet will guide ChatGPT to give you the answer you want. You don't
Yeah,
have to find it
that's
yourself.
yeah, that's really interesting. So it enhances the research process quite a bit as well. Yeah, and I can, now that you're saying it regarding it doesn't help really experts, I can actually confirm that, because I don't know programming, but what I do know is creating training plans actually. And I asked it several of times to give me a training plan for CrossFit, for example, right? 20 minutes, and I gave it some basic instructions. And the training program was all right, I would say. It was okay. But if I asked it a couple of times, give me other variations, it wasn't really creative, you know. There's like in this case, I was the expert, and
Yeah,
I did know. I would say I did know a little bit better than ChatGPT. So yeah, that's one example where,
but still
or
it's
like you said, right?
astonishing because I don't know about training plans. So I would get a mediocre training plan just by asking ChatGPT. So that's quite astonishing that ChatGPT is kind of average everywhere. So it's quite good.
I would even go further and say not mediocre, but it's 80% there. 80%.
Oh,
I have the last 20% advantage, but I would give it 80% even. So because you can also, if you're good at prompting, meaning asking the questions to
yep.
ChatGPT, then it will give you a really nice plan, which is 80% good. I would say 80%. Cool. Yeah, maybe one last question I wanted to ask. Yeah, regarding, because you already said it, these large language models are almost capable, I would say, in some cases are already capable tricking other humans
Yep.
in thinking that they're talking to a human, you know. And I would even say some people, for them it's even hard to imagine that they're talking to a machine right now. They're thinking like someone is manually typing the answers for them. But based on our discussion, how can we verify in the future that we are talking to an actual human, right? Because the technology might trick you into something you wouldn't want to do, like for example reveal your private key to it, you know, and then steal all your funds or your financial means on the blockchain, for example. But you already said these digital certificates could help in that case, right? So you would have a combination there between actually cryptography and AI, where you could say, okay, I'm a human right now and I have this digital certificate to prove it, and an AI is not capable of obtaining such a certificate.
Mm. If you think that we can distinguish humans from machines by any kind of certificate, I think uh, some humans will be willing to sell their certificate to shady companies using those to, I don't know what, trick people. And you're completely right. Social engineering to trick people will become a lot better with those large language models. They will become more convincing. It will be very hard to tell, yeah, facts from lies. It will be very, very hard to know if the guy on the telephone is really from your bank or maybe a machine. And so it will be very, very interesting what happens in future. And I could imagine a lot of different things. And one, yeah, a little bit pessimistic way would be that you will not trust people you only met in the internet. So you will trust people you know from a personal meeting, and you will trust them maybe in later conversations, even though the later conversations happen via internet. But that a certain person exists at all might only be verifiable by a personal meeting in future.
That's one big problem I can see actually, because if you would start like 1,000 chatbots that are via these large language models that are tricking people into financial schemes in what shape or form, whatever.
Yeah.
And most people are not. I mean, I would still say I can distinguish bots from real humans by asking tricky questions back, particularly when it comes to financials. But a lot of people are not capable of asking these questions and will just assume, oh, I'm talking to a real person here. So that's going to be a real challenge. Any other challenges that comes to mind when it comes to AI? Because you were talking earlier about Tesla. And I don't know if you've seen the movie I, Robot with Will Smith, where there's a scene a car drifts off of a bridge, I think, into a river, and a robot actually has the choice to save a small children or the main character of the movie, which is Will Smith. And the robot calculated during the rescue action, I can only save one human being here, and it gave the odds for the survival Will Smith. So it saved Will Smith over the little child, and the little child had to drown in the car.
The other movie just was too short, because if your main character is gone.
Yeah.
Okay, just kidding. Actually, what you're pointing at is very interesting. It is, I think, the so-called trolley problems, where you have ethical decisions which are very, very hard to make. Like, I can only steer left or right, and that way I will kill an old lady, and that way I will kill a young lady. And then what should I do? And I think a lot of these dilemmata have no solution. It's both wrong. Now you could argue, oh, maybe killing the old lady is better in a way that you maximize the number of months living, but still it's a very, very difficult decision. Maybe the young lady is ill. I don't know. And the main reason why I think those trolley problems are not realistic and therefore trick us into thoughts which are not the right thoughts, because in trolley problems, you always have certainty what will happen. So imagine the following trolley problem. You have a trolley coming, heading for 25 school children, and those will be killed if you don't stop the trolley. And now there's a very fat man standing next to the tracks, and you could stop the trolley by pushing the fat man in front of the trolley. Should you do it or should you not do it?
Very good
And I
example.
tell
Yeah.
you, who gives you the certainty that the fat man will stop the trolley? Who gives you the certainty that the 25 school children will not be off the track when the trolley comes? So actually, in reality, we have to deal with uncertainties. And I think killing a fat man just because you think, oh, this trick might turn out well, is maybe not okay. So whenever you do something, you have to be pretty sure to improve the situation. And I think that in a realistic trolley scenario, there would be so many uncertainties that it would not be okay to push the fat man on the tracks. Whereas in a fantasy world where you have all these certainties as if it were mathematical ethics, then it might be worthwhile to consider pushing the fat man on the tracks. But even if this would be the right decision in this mathematical fantasy world, I don't think you will learn a lot for your real life. For example, if you have a plane and the plane is hijacked, would you shoot it down? It depends on what would happen else, and you might not know. Yeah,
I wouldn't know.
I
I wouldn't
know
know what to do.
cases
Yeah.
where people thought about shooting down planes. In the context of 9/11, this was discussed a lot. But actually, if you are in this situation, then it's not a trolley problem where you have either all people in the skyscraper saved or not. It's just there has been a hijacking, and you don't know what will happen.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
actually, a lot of these trolley problems are interesting to think about, but to my opinion, you don't learn a lot for your real life because you will never encounter a trolley problem where you have all the certainty of the story of this trolley problem.
Yeah, I agree. But my question would be, do you ever think we will get fully self-driving cars?
Yes, we
Because,
will.
yeah, okay. So because these cars will have to make the decision then, right?
Yes,
If
that's true.
there's, yeah,
That's
that's
true. But
and the
they will not make trolley problem decisions because they will have incomplete information as well. So what they will do is they will try to minimize the impact, the and maybe they will do the following: if you do nothing, like you don't steer into another direction, the car will compute what will happen, maybe a crash. But if someone gets killed or not is maybe not what the car will know. But maybe yes, if it's a pedestrian. And now, if you steer left, and there's a very clear sign that there will be nothing happening on the left, but there will be something happening straight away, then the car will steer left. But if the car will have something happening straight and something happening to the left, then I think it will go straight, because turning left is a decision and it could be the wrong decision. Whereas keep going is bad, but going left is bad as well. So don't take action if it doesn't give you a clear advantage. I think that might be a way to resolve this problem. And you're completely right. I think a lot of trolley problems might be solved in future by just looking at what the autonomous car would be doing. But I think that there will be probably a very very easy solution, like they will avoid accidents, and maybe they will try to avoid accidents by checking different options, and if there's an option without harm, they will check it. But if all options are bad, uh, maybe if you have a way of calculating risk, and the risk is, say, some floating point number, then it's maybe very unlikely that all the numbers are the same, and then maybe it will just go for the smallest risk
yeah.
from calculating the risk from the sensors and not having complete knowledge.
Yeah, 100%. I personally think those are all valid thoughts. My personal opinion, we won't get fully self-driving cars anytime soon. I think we always somehow we are accepting a human decision way more than we accept an artificial intelligence decision, in my opinion. So there will at least be a mechanism where the driver can intervene in such situations for a long time.
You are probably right for self-driving cars, but self-driving cars which are fully autonomous and driving quicker than 25 kilometers per hour might still be relatively far away, further than we thought. But still, we will have other trolley problems when you think about war. And unfortunately, this thought is not as far away as it used to be for me. If you think about war, it can be an advantage to have artificially intelligent weapons. And artificially intelligent weapons could, for example, decide on their own where to steer and where to kill. And then you will get all these problems immediately. And I think that artificially intelligent weapons are already a thing. And so all the problems are there.
Okay. Yeah. No. Wow. Okay. That's that's really interesting. Artificially intelligence weapon. Yeah. Maybe a topic we could discuss on our next podcast. Thank you so much for coming. Do you have any last thoughts for the audience? Do you want to say something? Did we leave out any topics you wanted to cover? Yeah.
Actually, thanks a lot for having me here. We covered a lot of topics, and you even hinted at a possible next time we could discuss. And so I will not give any last words right now, but thank you. And hopefully we will do something like this again.
Cool. Thank you so much.